Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's Charity Village webinar. We'll wait just a moment for everyone to join the session. Okay, we will get started. Welcome to today's Charity Village webinar. My name is Charlie, and I'm the graphic designer and marketing coordinator here with Charity Village. As we are gathering here on a virtual platform, it is important to acknowledge that each of us is joining this webinar from the ancestral or unceded lands of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation people. As a settler on this land, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. For those of you who may be joining a Charity Village webinar for the first time, Charity Village is Canada's largest online job board for the nonprofit sector. In addition to our online job board, organizations can also post volunteer positions, so if you're looking for work or to recruit talent in the sector, Charity Village is a great place to start. We also have a ton of excellent resources for nonprofit professionals, including online courses, articles, fundraising tools, and free webinars like the one we are presenting today. Before we start today's webinar, I would like to quickly run through some housekeeping items. You may have noticed that when you join the webinar, you are automatically placed on mute. Since we have hundreds of participants in today's session, it is important for us to minimize the amount of background noise so that everyone can clearly hear the presentation. But you can still ask questions and make comments using the question box at the bottom of the Zoom control panel. Look for that at the bottom of your screen. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so please submit your questions as you think of them, and we will do our best to get to as many as possible. You can also email your questions to webinars@charityvillage.com. If you happen to encounter any technical issues with the webinar, whether with viewing the presentation or with the audio, please let us know in the question box or by sending us an email. We will do our best to get any technical difficulties resolved as quickly as possible. But in a worst case scenario, please remember that we are recording today's webinar and we will send you the full recording by email tomorrow. So if you get called away or disconnected, you'll still be able to view the full presentation. And with that, I would like to welcome our presenter for today, Julia Gockenbach, nonprofit advocate and communications manager at Donor Perfect. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm so excited to get ready and get started today. Thank you all for joining. We're really excited to get into some practical strategies about how to engage your donors. As mentioned, my name is Julia Gockenbach. I am a nonprofit advocate at Donor Perfect, here to kind of be the voice for nonprofits. Prior to being with Donor Perfect, I was a development director and worked in the nonprofit sector for 10 years. So for those of you on the call, I totally know the life that you're living when it comes to all the hats that you wear with nonprofits. And today, the goal is just to take some time out of your day to focus on some learning, focus on some ideation. Let's get some creativity going. And we're not trying to add things to your plate today. We're just going to try and solve some problems when it comes to engagement. I'm very excited about it, and I think this will be a great time together. So thank you for being here. Okay, we're going to get started right away with a poll. So I want to know from you all what you would most like to see in 2025. Obviously, you have a million goals, you have a lot of plans, you have so much to do in the next couple of months, but what are some things that you're really focusing on this year? Are you focusing on getting more first-time gifts? Do you want some new givers in your system? Are you looking for more participation? I know that there's been a lot of competition, for lack of a better term, for your audience's attention. Maybe you're looking for your audience to be more participating. Are you looking for higher retention? There's been a lot of turnover year over year. Givers are down. Are you looking to retain your givers? And then lastly, are you looking to expand your audience? Maybe you're asking the same group of people for the same things year after year. Maybe in 2025, your goal is to get some new people that you can talk to. Let's see what the results are. Okay, great. Of course, we are quite divided here. I know that it was probably really, really hard to choose one of those. For me, I don't even know what one I would have chosen because they're all so important. So just to recap what everyone said here, more first-time gifts is the thing that people are most excited about, most looking forward to. 37% said more first-time gifts. More participation was 17% of you. Higher retention was 21%, and expanded audience was 25%. So we're pretty close here. 37, 25, 21, and 17. All of these things are very important, and that is what we're going to talk about today. Now, this is very common. We see this a lot with our Donor Perfect clients. All of these are great opportunities for engagement and things that are sometimes really hard to focus on. So good for you for choosing this, but also know that you're not alone, that other people are experiencing these same things. Also, I want to point out that we're not talking about what is hard here. We're talking about what is next. We're looking forward to the future. We're looking forward to solving some of these opportunities. We're not going to stand and stick our feet into things that are hard and that we're going to be negative or we're not going to be hopeful. That's not what's happening here. What's happening here is we're talking about some new ideas for how to move forward in these 4 specific areas. Now, what we did at Donor Perfect is, like I said, we listened to what our clients were really dealing with, which were these 4 things, and we worked on these new engagement models for trying to get people to accomplish each of these opportunities. That is what we're going to talk about today, these 4 different engagement models that help solve some of these needs that all of you all chose for something that you needed in 2025. Okay, I'm not going to bury the lead. We're just going to get right into the models and get this thing going. Okay, so 37% of you said you were looking for more first-time gifts. You're looking for a wider base from prospects to move to active donors. Maybe you have a lot of people out there that you know about or that maybe are passionate about your cause, but they have not given yet. There's not been a conversion of a gift yet. That is the first model. That is our funnel. I'll get into all these a little bit deeper, so we're just going to do a high-level view right now, and then we'll go into each model more specifically. But for this one, more first-time gifts, more donors, more movement to active donors, that is the funnel. Next, 17% of you said you would like more participation from your current audience. So more participation, that means your current audience is opening your emails. They are really in there when it comes to events. They are telling other people about your organization. They are all in for what you're doing. We're going to talk about that when it comes to the pyramid, growing from someone who's like maybe a little bit interested in what you're doing to all in. They want to know everything. They want to tell everyone about everything. That is the pyramid. Next, 21% of you said you're looking for higher retention. This is a really interesting one because this was something that was really hard for me. I would go into my live reports, my people who gave last year but not yet this year, and I would just feel so worried or ashamed or scared that I was losing donors. But that is a really common thing happening in nonprofits. We see those trends all over. Over the last 4 years, retention has been down. Studies show that over the last 4 years, it's been declining. So this is a normal thing. We're going to talk about that with the donor engagement loop, how to keep people involved in what you're doing and to continue to reach them to avoid churn. And then lastly, we're going to talk about expanding your audience. So I'm sorry, I'm moving my image here because it's covering my slide. So lastly, we're going to talk about expanding our audience. 25% of you said that this was something that you really wanted to work on this year, which I respect. I know for me, again, it was kind of like I was asking the same people for the same things. It was maybe the well was running a little bit dry when it came to going to the same people over and over. So we want to expand our audience, find some new givers, and get them involved in what we're doing. These are the 4 models: the funnel, the pyramid, the loop, and the network. We're going to dive into each of these a little more in depth as we go through the presentation. But let's address an elephant in the room. I know that you have probably seen some of these before. Maybe you've seen a funnel before or a pyramid, but there are things different about these modern models that I'm going to tell you about. Oops. So what is different about these models? First, there are options. I listed 4 models. I thought I only needed 1. I had to develop at my nonprofit the donor engagement pyramid. I thought that's all I needed. I just needed to move people from a wide base to a narrow top. Whoever they were, whatever they were doing, didn't matter to me. I just had 1 model. But in this case, we're saying you can't really just have 1 model because there's not a blanket need. In the same way that we were all very, very split on the poll and what thing we needed to solve in 2025. That's That's consistently true. You can't just apply the same tactics to getting a new first-time gift as you would to retaining donors. There's a difference there. It's not blanket there's not a blanket solution for that. So we are advocating for more than one model, depending on the need, identifying the issue and the goal, like expanding your network, and then applying the model to that goal. And we'll talk about that a little more practically. Also, something that is different here is that we're really focusing on relationships. You'll hear me talk through the presentation about the difference between monetary giving and the difference between connection. We don't want to miss out on people that are connected to our organization just because they're not giving this certain threshold. We want to make sure we're equitable when it comes to our engagement, and that's something that these models really focus on. We don't want to look at our donors as ATMs. We don't want to look at our volunteers as just free work. We want to look at these people as people who are connected to what we're doing. And then lastly, each of these models has a clear path to conversion. Like I said, I had one pyramid, everybody was on the pyramid and everybody was moving up. But what were they doing to move up? I don't know. I didn't have that planned out. In these modern models, we're going to talk about the plan to get to a point of conversion and then moving past that conversion point for the next conversion point. We'll talk in depth about what that might look like to move people through these models. Okay, now that you know the four models and you know why they're a little bit different than models you may have heard before, we're going to talk about a couple of big questions. I talked about these conversion points and making sure there's action happening, but what are those conversion points? We need a set path. I don't know about you all, but I am a checklist girly. I want a checklist and I want to mark things off as I go. So what are those desired conversion points? What is the path that we're taking in order to solve the goal in 2025 of first-time gifts, or one of the other goals that we referred to in the poll? What is that path? Next question, how do we move individuals or segments, groups of donors, through those conversion points? What actions are we taking? What are some ideas? Let's brainstorm some opportunities. We're going to do that today, which I just want to note, maybe grab a pen and paper because we're going to have a lot of ideas, and I don't want you to lose those ideas as we're talking. I know we're on a one-way webinar, so when I say we're talking, it's me talking, but I know in your head, as I mention ideas or as I talk about donor examples, you're going to have a lot of ideas too. So jot those down, talk to your executive director, talk to your development director, talk to your other people on your team about some of those ideas and implement them. Don't lose them just because we're on a webinar. Make sure to write them down. So we'll talk about some of those ideas, some of those conversion points. And then lastly, the big question is what happens after they convert? For those first-time givers, for those that were trying to collect a new first-time gift, we don't want just that. We want a relationship with those people. What do we do next after we get that gift? Do we just move on? Spoiler alert, the answer is no. We continue our relationship with them, but we're going to talk a little bit about that. The clear expectations and conversions to get these people closer to your mission. Okay, so we're going to dive into each of these engagement models, these four engagement models, but I want to prep you before we go into each one. I'm going to ask you to think of a donor that would apply to this need. So when we go into the funnel, when we talk about this more first-time gifts model, I'm going to ask you, okay, think of a donor that you would like a first-time gift from. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because this is practical. We're not talking about some pie in the sky, polka dot plan. We're like not making you connect the dots here. The picture will be clear. We have some ideas for how you're going to move a prospect into a first-time giver. So we want you to be thinking of a real person because these are real opportunities. Let's apply it and not just think of it as a best practice, but something that we can do. So that's your pre-work when we get to each section. So let's jump in to our first model, the funnel. So this model, the funnel, addresses the need for more first-time gifts. For the majority of you, the 37% of you who said you really want to focus on first-time gifts this year. For me, I worked in an organization that was in schools and we did student clubs. And I know there were people in my community that were excited and passionate about students. I know that there were people that were giving to other student organizations or that were wanting to be involved on campuses and things like that. So my problem was not the passion of our mission. It was, how do I get those people closer to what we're doing? People loved students. We just needed to get them involved in what we were doing. Okay, so now is your opportunity to think of your real life example. Who is someone in your orbit that maybe you know, but they haven't given yet? For me, my example is going to be the Dickens family. The Dickens family is a family in my city, and they are really involved. So there's the first brother, John Dickens, and he owns a business and he gives to our sponsorships. He's really, really involved. The sister, Lauren Dickens, is on our board, and the mom, Barbara Dickens, is one of our volunteers. But there's another brother, Philip Dickens, who has never given. He's just kind of always been around. Like he comes to our golf event, he's there, but he's never given. So that's the person I'm thinking of. That's a real person in my life that we would like to bring in as a first-time giver in our organization. So the opportunity here is to get the Dickens to give. The model we're going to apply is the funnel. Now let's talk about the conversion path. This is the breakdown of the funnel model. Now, again, we're not only looking for the Dickens to give one gift, we want a long-term relationship with them. So how do we move them from prospect, someone who has not yet given, to a spontaneous contributor, sorry. So from prospect to spontaneous contributor, someone who has given, and then from there to a dedicated supporter. We're not just looking for that one-time gift. We want to go beyond that one-time gift to a dedicated supporter. So let's talk through how to move someone through this funnel. Now, I want to point out these lines. Obviously, they kind of act as barriers. We need to move from step 1 to step 2. We can't move from step 1 to step 3. We need to take each sub goal to get through this funnel. So the prospect to spontaneous contributor is first, and then from spontaneous contributor to dedicated supporter. So how are we going to get them from each of those stages into each of these sub goals? Let's talk about some ideas. What are some practical ways we can do that? So think of the example person that's in your head. They are currently a prospect, a non-giver, someone who you know is out there. Maybe they're passionate about your cause, but how do we get them to move from prospect to spontaneous contributor? There are a couple of ideas. Maybe for me, with the Dickens family, I think I would invite Philip Dickens to my like program site. Maybe he's heard about our mission from his family, but he never has really seen it in action. And so maybe bringing him closer to what we're doing will be a helpful way for him to see the mission and see the passion and see what's important about these students. So maybe that's an idea. We offer him a program tour. Or maybe we just need to sit down with him and talk about a new initiative. His family is already taking care of a lot of other initiatives. Maybe he wants something that's his own that he could really be the champion for. So we have a lot going on. Let's sit down and talk to him about something that he specifically can affect. Okay, don't forget to jot some of your ideas down as we're talking through these things. Like I said, we're 15 minutes into the presentation and we already have some ideas for how to involve people in your organization. So I know you're thinking of ideas too, so make sure to jot them down. Okay, so let's say that maybe we take Philip on a program tour and he really feels moved by the things happening on campus and he decides to make his first gift. That is great. That is a huge victory. Step 1 is I'm going to do a happy dance because I've been trying to get him to give for years. But let's say that really affected him and moved him into this spontaneous contribution lane. He gave a gift. But again, that's not where we want to stop. We want these people to be fully engaged in our organization. We want them to become dedicated supporters. Move them from prospect, people we don't know, to spontaneous giver, to dedicated supporter. So what are some ways that we can get him to move into a dedicated supporter? We don't want just one gift. We want a relationship. So what are some things we could do? Maybe we enroll him in a new welcome series. Maybe there's some way for him to be reminded of the impact. If we have a new welcome series written, then we're going to be able to remind him of the mission, remind him of the impact, remind him of why we got started. Not only Mr. Dickens, but all these other people too that are giving to us for the first time. Maybe we need to sit down and write that new welcome series. Another idea would be to make sure we're following each other on social media. Maybe I have a plan to share a story coming up, and us following each other on social media make sure that he is going to see that story about the impact that his gift is making. Or maybe Mr. Dickens got so excited about this new initiative that I shared with him, and he wants to start his own crowdfunding campaign. That would move him into dedicated supporter. I don't know about you all, but when somebody starts fundraising on your behalf, then you know they are very dedicated to your mission. So things like that will show that this person is connected to what you're doing is a great way to move them through the funnel. So let's say that those ideas after the program tour and after the new initiative and after he saw the story on social media, he decided he was going to be a dedicated supporter and he was going to continue giving or start a crowdfunding campaign or do something that brought him closer to our mission. That is a big deal. He has moved from prospect to dedicated supporter. There's a clear conversion there. There's a clear movement through an engagement funnel, but it's not just because he felt like it. It's because we, as the nonprofit, I, as the development director, was able to prompt him and give him opportunities to give, to bring him into the fold. Okay, so that's engagement model number one, the funnel, moving people from prospect to spontaneous contributor to dedicated supporter. This will solve the problem of needing more first-time gifts. How do you move people through that? Those are some examples, and I know you all have plenty of ideas too. I wish I could sit down with you and hear all of them, but we wouldn't have time for that. So let's move on to engagement model number two. The second engagement model is the pyramid. 17% of you said that you're looking for more of your audience to be more involved in what you're doing. You want to strengthen your relationships. I know for me, that was really, really important, especially when I was new to my organization. I wanted them to be able to trust me and for us to be able to build a relationship. So that's what this pyramid is all about. Again, I mentioned this at the beginning, but I want to remind you that the difference about these modern models is that it's all about relationship. So let's unpack that a little bit. Connection does go beyond and often comes before contribution. So let's unpack that a little bit. I had a pyramid, like I said, that was my one engagement model, and that's all I used, and I just thought I'd put everybody on there. But if I sit down now and I think about it, everybody wasn't on there. What about my volunteers? What about the people who were advocating for me? What about the alumni who had gone through gone through our program but maybe hadn't given yet? Those are advocates for our organization. Maybe their monetary giving isn't super high or at all, but they are still connected to our organization and they bring something to us, whether that's advocacy or helping us run our programs or whatever. They're still involved in what we're doing. My pyramid just had like monthly givers, sporadic givers, major givers. And it only had to do with giving, and it only had to do with the amount of giving, which now I'm looking back on that, and that's so inequitable. Some people were volunteering as their gift, and they should be as connected to the organization as we are. The dollars do not equal connection. I don't know about you all, but there have been times where I've given to something because they were on my doorstep and I just wanted to give and move on. I didn't think about them again. So we can't equate monetary giving to being connected to your organization, because that will put people who aren't connected in and take people who are connected out. And we want to make sure we don't do that. Okay, so again, the pyramid, we are looking to strengthen our relationships. So now it's time to think through that example giver that maybe you are looking for a stronger relationship with. For me, my example is going to be the Sage family. The Sage family used to be really, really connected to our organization. They own a pool business. I live in South Florida, so a pool business is a very big deal around here. And they owned a pool business, and they're very well off, great business, very savvy family. But when our old executive director left, they kind of disconnected from us a little bit. They didn't necessarily stop giving, but they weren't, showing up at everything. They weren't our biggest fans. They weren't, telling everyone about us. So I want to work really hard to bring the sages back connected to our organization as strongly as possible. So what should I do to solve that opportunity? So the opportunity, bring the sages in. I'm going to apply this engagement model, the pyramid, and let's talk through some of the conversion ideas. So for bringing people to be more connected to your organization, we have these three sections. We want them to be curious, like they're kind of on the outside looking in, looking through the windows, trying to figure out what's going on, and then they're connected. They have a relationship with you. They're involved in what you're doing, or they are just kind of doing what they can to be connected, but the real goal is for them to be super committed. We want them to be all in. We want them to really be our advocates and be able to tell people about us and to dive into our mission. So how do we move someone who's curious, kind of on the outside looking in, checking through the windows? They know that we're here, but maybe they're not super involved. How do we move them from curious to connected and then ultimately to committed? And again, you see these lines which serve as conversion points. So let's talk a little bit about how to get them through those conversions. And here, as a reminder, our goal is to strengthen relationships. We're looking for more stronger relationships with our current audience. We want them to be more connected. So for us, we'll start in the curious line. The sages are kind of on the outside. They know about us, but maybe they don't know about us recently. What should we do to bring them in a little bit more, to get to know them better, to bring them and help them to be connected? A couple of ideas. Maybe we can send out a survey to all of our contacts and ask them, hey, why do you give to our organization? Some people hate surveys, and that's okay. Maybe your survey has a drop-down list so that people don't have to think so much. Maybe you're an animal shelter and you want to ask them, do you like dogs or cats better? But even just knowing that helps you to know that giver a little bit more. Why would they be connected to your organization? Ask them. That's one idea, to move them from curious to connected, to build a relationship. Another idea, maybe as you're looking through this, like for me, when I started thinking about the sages, I thought, oh my goodness, there are a lot of like business owners that were very connected to my old executive director, but aren't as connected anymore. Maybe I need an initiative to reaching out to that group of people as a whole. Maybe I should have a focus on that whole segment of people, reaching out to those uh, corporations or those sponsors and trying to figure out what we can do with them to partner in the future, get to know them. Why were they connected to us before? Maybe it goes beyond the sages, and I realize this whole group needs some loving. So maybe that's something that I could do, is start talking to this whole group as a whole and do kind of a one-to-many conversation. Send out some emails, send a video thanking them, things like that keep them involved and that give them an opportunity to feel connected to what we're doing. We want to get to know them between this curious stage and this connected stage. It's all about getting to know them. We're getting to know them, they're getting to know us, reminding them of why they want to be involved. So let's say that we did this initiative where we talked to all of the corporate sponsors, including the sages, and we were able to really get to know them well. And we moved them to the connected group. They feel like they know us, we feel like we know them, there's a relationship built, so now they're connected. But of course, we want more. These are some of our biggest sponsors. We want them to be really committed to what we're doing, and we want them to feel like they're all in with us. What do we do to move them all the way through this engagement pyramid to grow them into a really committed partner? What are some ideas? Maybe we plan an intimate event that's just for sponsors. Like I said, if during the curious stage I decide I really want to reach out to our corporate sponsors, maybe we decide we'll do an event that's just for them, that they don't get asked to sponsor, because aren't they asked to sponsor every event? Maybe we do something that's intimate and that's just for them, and that they're not getting hit up to throw, Maybe that's an idea to bring them in and have them a little bit more committed and to remind them of what we're doing. Or maybe we invite them to a strategic planning session. I said the sages are really savvy. They know business, and maybe they could help us work out a couple of things. I know for me, one year we were trying to figure out how to do sponsorships in a way that didn't feel like we were going to the same group of people every 3 months to ask for the next event sponsorship. I had a sit down with one of our corporate sponsors and talk to them about how they felt when they got hit up for every event. What would be the best way to do that? And they explained that actually asking at the beginning of the year for a lump sum for all the events would have been better. And it would have let go of some of that fatigue of continuing to return and ask, which I had never even thought of. I thought that me returning to them and asking them to give again was a great way to like continue the relationship. But what would have been better is for me to ask once and then continued the relationship in a different way. Had I not sat down with that person and asked that strategic question, maybe they would have continued to fall off. But instead, they now help us to figure out those annual sponsorships every year, and they are really, really all in. So they have moved to the committed stage. They were part of a strategic conversation. They really felt bought into the organization, and we moved them from curious to committed. We were able to really see their buy-in to what we were doing, which is important. And them sitting down in that strategic conversation helped them know where we're headed, helped us talk about growth. And I don't know about you all, but often if I sit down with a nonprofit and I get to hear some stories and hear about their growth, it's hard to stay away once you know what's really going on. So that's a great way to bring someone in, someone who you already kind of knew, but maybe felt disconnected. Bring them in, let them know what you're doing, help get some advice from them, and that will help them move through the pyramid. That will help them to be engaged in what you're doing. That will help them to have higher participation in all the things that you have going on, which is really great. So there we go. That's our second model, the pyramid, the goal of moving people we know into stronger relationship with you. Now we're going to move on to the third model. You all are doing great. I know we're holding on here. Okay, so the third model, we're talking about higher retention. Now this one, 21% of you said that this is important to you in 2025. I know, like I said, for me, this was me when I was looking at my Libont reports, just like peeking through my eyeballs because I was so nervous about the givers that I was losing. And like I said, in the nonprofit world right now, we are seeing major turnover in givers. We're not necessarily seeing fewer dollars, but we are seeing fewer givers. Those givers are giving more, and so they're it's kind of balancing out, but we're losing donors. So what can we do to keep people involved in what we're doing? People we know that have been part of what we're doing, that's connected to what we're doing. How can we keep them connected? That's the purpose of the loop. We want to help nonprofits to retain the people they know, to retain their givers. So let me add some context to this. Here is an example of the loop. We want to look at receiving the next contribution. Again, here I'm just going to note that it doesn't have to be a monetary contribution. Maybe you're looking for a volunteer to sign up for another school year, or maybe you're looking for someone to lead a food drive. It doesn't have to be a monetary contribution, but you are looking for that next contribution. We're going to talk about moving from inspiration to the trigger, to evaluation, to commitment, and then back through again and again. As you can tell, and by the name of this model, the loop, this is not a linear engagement. You don't just go from one step to the next, and then you're done. Here, you're going to continue going through this whole loop of inspiring the person, helping them to have an opportunity to give, giving them time to evaluate whether or not that's important to them, and then allowing them to commit to your organization. So in this model specifically, communication is definitely key. We'll talk about that a little bit, but keep that in mind as we move forward. So what do each of these stages mean? Let's talk about it. We want to keep these supporters in the loop. Again, they can be monetary supporters, volunteers, board members, whomever, but we want to keep them in the loop. And we're doing that through these stages. The inspiration stage, this is a stage for them to be reminded of your mission. Why are you all doing what you're doing? We need to be inspired. I don't know about you all, but when I give to an organization, it's because I'm inspired by what they're doing, or when I volunteer with an organization, or when I'm advocate for an organization. It's because I'm inspired by what they're doing. Sometimes we just need to remind people about what we're doing at our nonprofit. So let's inspire them. The next step is the trigger phase. This is to offer an opportunity to be part of what you're doing. So whether that's, hey, we have some advocacy opportunities or something like that, it's an opportunity to trigger them to be involved. And then give them a moment to decide whether or not that is something they want. They need to evaluate the impact. They need to evaluate the time. Give them that opportunity. And then lastly, they go into the commitment phase where they're committed to what you're doing and committed to being part of it. So let's talk a little bit about how to move them through each of these phases. Like we talked at the beginning, there's a conversion point. These are all conversion points. They want to be inspired, and then they're triggered to give, and then they evaluate, and then they're committed. That's all an opportunity for conversion here. So we're going to go through some ideas. Okay, so the opportunity here is to keep people passionate about what you're doing. The model we're going to use is the loop, and we'll talk through some ideas for the conversion point. Now, here's your opportunity to think of the real life person that this could apply to. So for me, I'm going to think of a volunteer named Devin. Devin is really involved in our schools. They have a great relationship with a lot of our students, and I just want to remind them of their impact that they're having. And I would love for them to volunteer for another year with us. So let's talk through how to move them through these conversion points. So first, we'll talk about the inspiration phase. I want to remind them of what we're doing. What are some ways we can do that? Of course, we can send an email. We could send a social media post, whatever. One thing that I would maybe want to do is I'd do a new video talking about all the things that is happening right now in our organization. And in a post-2020 world, I could just sit at my computer and film a quick video. It doesn't have to be this big, long, dramatic thing. I could just sit down and say, hey, Devin, I just want to remind you of the impact that you're making here. This organization has done this, this, and this in the last year, and you've been part of that. And I just want to remind you of the inspiration behind what you're doing. So we'll go through that inspiration stage to remind them that they're part of something big. And next is the trigger phase. This is, again, giving them an opportunity to be part of what we're doing. So maybe I send a list to all of our volunteers about advocacy opportunities, or a list saying, hey, next year we're in this many schools and we need this many volunteers. Will you consider volunteering with us? That gives them an opportunity to really decide if they want to be part of what we're doing. And it sends them into the evaluation stage. Are they making an impact? Are they part of something that they're passionate about? This is an important part of engagement because engagement is not one way. We need to make sure that not only are we passionate about what we're doing, but the people we're talking to need to be passionate as well. It's not just us spewing information at them. They have a say in whether or not they want to be part of what we're doing. So we give them a minute to decide and to evaluate their impact. Maybe I do that by sitting down with Devin over coffee and talking about the amount of kids that they were interacting with over the course of their 3 years volunteering with us. I want them to take a moment to evaluate if they want to be part of this and why. And then lastly is the commitment phase. This is where we give an opportunity for Devin to make a pledge. Maybe they decide that they do want to do a club next year. Maybe they decide they want to give, whatever. It's just an opportunity for them to make a commitment to what we're doing. Because again, with engagement, it's not like me forcing someone to be part of what we're doing. Devin is passionate about these school kids in the same way that I am. And so I'm giving Devin the opportunity to be part of what we're doing, to be committed to what we're doing. And like I said before, it does not have to be monetary. Devin is making our programs run because they are there at the school and they are making an impact in what we're doing. So this is an opportunity for people to be engaged in what we're doing. Okay, that was model number 3. So we are almost there. We are on our last model here. And this model is actually my favorite model. This is the network. So 25% of you said that you're interested in expanding your audience this year. This is such a hard thing. I think I was in nonprofits for 10 years and it just is so difficult to expand your audience, to find some new people. But I have good news. We're going to kind of break that down today. I always felt like I was asking the same people for the same things, and I needed to find a new pool of people to work with. And not that the previous people I was working with weren't good enough or whatever, but we wanted to do more. We wanted new programs, and to grow our capacity, we needed to grow our giving. And so how do I find some new people that we're going to give? It's this network model is very similar to like influencers. So I don't know about you all, but I often get ads from influencers on social media, and those people get to choose the products that they're connected with. They choose things based on their beliefs or based on their interests. They're promoting things that are important to them. That's what we're saying here. How can we get people who already know us and love us to promote this thing that they are passionate about, that they want to tell their friends about? How do we equip them to share this information with people in their circle? We want to gain information from new potential donors. How do we do that? Now, let me give you a little bit of context, just like I did with the loop. So there are different types of connections that create this hive of community. You see them here. These are just a few examples, but there are different types. So who are these people? The individual, socializer, partner, and broadcaster. Let's break that down a little bit. The individual, pretty self-explanatory. So that's a person, just someone who exists. People know people. It's an individual. Next is the socializer. This is someone that's very active in your nonprofit. They are ready to tell everybody everywhere about what you're doing. They are very social and they're connected to what you're doing. Next is the broadcaster. This is someone who has a great following, just kind of knows everybody, is out in the community all the time. This is a type of person that you could really partner with in order to grow your community. And then lastly are your partners. This is another way to say your sponsors or your corporations or people or something that represents a large group of people. So these are just a few examples, but again, everyone knows someone. So using anyone in the networking model is beneficial because everyone knows someone, and the goal here is to expand your reach. So as a reminder, these are the kind of the goal is to just grow into each of these hives. How do we get more people to know about what we're doing? Now, here's your opportunity to think of another example of a real life person. For me, I'm going to think of Sunny. Sunny is one of our board members, and she is constantly giving to our organization. She gave last year's Giving Tuesday match, and she gave last year's back to school gift. We wanted to do some backpacks, and so she did a big gift for back to school and Giving Tuesday. And so I'm kind of feeling like maybe I shouldn't ask her for another monetary gift, but I could work with her for this networking model. I want to go beyond using Sunny for monetary giving, and let's work with Sunny to help grow our network. So the opportunity is to meet Sunny's friends. The model we're going to apply is the network. And now let's talk about a couple of the ideas for conversion points. Again, a lot of these examples that we're using are just that, examples. The goal is to kind of get your creative juices flowing. How are you going to widen your community? How are you going to get into these other cells of this beehive? Those are the ideas we're working through here. So here you see the broadcaster is highlighted. That's going to be Sunny. We're saying that Sunny is this broadcaster. Anytime she walks into a room, she knows everyone. If she's at an event, she knows the host, the guest of honor, the greeter, and the caterer. She knows everyone. So she is a broadcaster. Everyone kind of knows when Sunny's in the room. So that is our first hive already highlighted. We got Sunny. But we want her to reach other areas of this honeycomb or other areas of this community. So what can we do to help her to bring in some individuals? Maybe I every month or every quarter rather sit down with Sunny to have a kind of impact lunch where I talk to her about all the things that is happening because of her giving or because of her involvement. Maybe I encourage Sunny to bring someone with her to one of those lunches. Maybe that's a great opportunity for her to involve a new individual in what we're doing. She has friends. Everybody loves lunch. Maybe this is a great opportunity for her to bring someone in and be connected to what we're doing and kind of highlight these other pieces of the hive when it comes to individuals. Next, maybe we can get Sunny to join forces with one of our socializers and try and solve a problem. One of the things that was really hard for me was finding local events that we could be part of. For example, in my community, we have this giving circle, and I didn't really know how to get like to become one of the organizations that was um, eligible for the giving circle. And so maybe I could have Sunny and a socializer sit down and figure out how does our organization get involved in this network. And that is a way to kind of use Sunny's expertise with knowing people, and it's an opportunity for us to learn more people and to get connected in another way. And then lastly, we can finish filling the hive, finish filling this community with some people that Sunny might know in corporations. I know sometimes people can be quite protective of their contacts, and so maybe I could provide Sunny with a like email template that she could send to the people that she knows that have a business or that work at a business. And I could write up an email and encourage her to send it to people she knows and to invite them to be part of what we're doing. Again, this is a way for someone that knows and loves us and wants to be part of what we're doing and is gung-ho about all of the things we're doing. It's a way for them to be involved in a non-monetary aspect. So getting them engaged in a way that doesn't require a gift. Although I'm happy for Sunny to give anytime, whenever she wants. But if she's looking for another way to be involved, this is a great way to engage with Sunny and to bring in more members of the community. Okay, I know we just talked about so much in just 45 minutes. It's been very quick, but we did go through these 4 models. The funnel, we talked about getting more first-time gifts, moving people from prospect to spontaneous contributor to dedicated supporter. We talked about more participation, bringing people from curious to connected and to committed, making sure they're all in on what we're doing. We talked about getting higher retention by reminding people of why they're connected to what we're doing. We want to inspire them and remind them of an opportunity to give with the trigger phase, give them a chance to evaluate whether or not they want to be part of this, and bring them into a commitment with us because they're passionate about our cause. And then lastly, we looked into expanding our audience. Who can we use in our area to or not use? I don't want it to seem like we're using them. Who can we give an opportunity to widen the reach of our organization, an organization that they are passionate about? Maybe we can use a broadcaster or an individual. Everyone knows someone, or a socializer, someone who's really passionate about what we're doing, or our corporate sponsors. How do we work with them to widen our audience and use the resources that we already have, people who are already passionate about what we're doing? Okay, I know we talked about so many ideas. I don't even remember all of the ideas we talked about. I don't think that you all remember all of the ideas we talked about either. I'm sure you jotted many down, but I have good news for you. Donor Perfect has actually created a way for us to continue these conversations and to continue trying to come up with some new ideas. We have created a card game, which is so fun and cool. And as a former fundraiser, this is something that I would have loved. And this card game helps give you an opportunity to come up with some ideas on how to engage your donors. Obviously, there are 52 cards in this deck, so there's way, way, way more than 52 ideas about engagement, but this is a place to get started on brainstorming. Each of the 4 funnels represents a suit. You can see them here. The loop is one, the network, the pyramid, the funnel. Those are all of our suits. And the goal here is to have fun. Fundraising can be hard sometimes, but if you could sit down and play a quick card game to get some ideas going, this is a good way to do it. Now I'm going to quickly run through a couple of ideas for card games because what is a deck of cards without some card games? So first is pick a card, any card. This is pretty obvious. You pick a card and you do what's on it. Now, obviously, nobody's going to be standing over your shoulder making sure that you're doing this exact thing, but maybe it could spur an idea. This card, for example, says follow 50 potential donors on social media. Maybe your social media is not that great. Maybe instead you say, I'm not going to follow 50 donors. We don't even have social media. Maybe I'll start a social media platform, or maybe I'll send an email to 50 people. You can adjust them as you want. No one's checking on you, but it's an opportunity to get some ideas about what you could be doing. I also want to note here in our card deck, The prompts on the cards get harder as the numbers get higher. So maybe you draw a king that says that you need to plan this whole event, but you don't have time for that. So that's okay. It's just a way, again, to get some ideas out there. If you don't have time to do the thing, maybe you make a note about that as an idea. No one's checking in on you. You can just have fun. Okay, another game you could play is high-low. So everybody's played this game before. You choose the card with a higher number wins. But you can be creative with this. Maybe the person who threw the higher number gets to pick which task they do. Or this is a really great thing to play with maybe your boss, where you're able to tell what is a more important priority, regardless of the number that we assigned. Maybe your boss says, "Oh yeah, let's create a survey right now to learn more about our donors," and that's your task for the day. Another game that we like here is called Make 21. This is for all of you poker players out there, but for those who are not poker players, this is where you get a hand of cards that all add up to 21. Face cards are 10 points, aces are 1 or 11. And the goal here is for you to get a group of cards and to accomplish those tasks. So in this case, the hand is to record a video asking about new donors, to report on lapsed donors, and to offer an exclusive thing for your prospects. So the goal here is, yeah, just to get some ideas for how to engage some of your donors. And then lastly, and this one's my favorite, this is solve a scenario. So let's say that you maybe you have a board member that was really involved but is not involved anymore, and you want to figure out how to incorporate them back into what you're doing. You can solve that scenario in the hand of 5 or something like that. In this case, you used different numbers, different suits. It's not all in one suit. You don't only need that new board member to expand their network. You want that new board member to increase participation, to give again, to tell people about you, and to be really involved. So you choose from each suit. So anyway, those are a couple of ideas of how to use these cards. I hope that you will. And if you scan this QR code, it will take you to a landing page that will show you a way to play these cards in a digital space. So highly recommend you checking out donorperfect.com/cards. And I hope that this has been a helpful presentation where we talked a little bit about donor engagement. I'd love to answer some of your questions if we have some time.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Julia. Those cards look super cool. We're getting lots of comments about them.
Cool.
Our first question I have here is, do you have any engagement tips for small or new emerging nonprofits who don't have an established donor base?
Yes. My first recommendation would be to check out these cards and start with the lower numbers, the low-hanging fruit. How do you figure out some easy tasks to build engagement? And then the second thing I would say is to maybe lay out some of your specific needs. So what do you need? Do you need people to be closer to your mission? Do you need people to start giving? Do you need people to know about you? Maybe a lot of people don't know about you. I would just recommend, again, sitting down and brainstorming some of these ideas for how to get started using these models. It will be helpful.
Awesome. And the next question we have is, how do you balance the practicality of easy online donations to actually going out and prospecting donors that more than likely would have a higher chance of becoming dedicated supporters?
Oh man, isn't that the age-old question? I think a lot of like the easy online giving, um, the balance there is that could be automated, and so you don't have to use as much time doing that, in the sense that you have a website that says, "Hey, you can give here," and for CRMs like Donor Perfect, that information goes straight into Donor Perfect, so there's not much you have to do for those people who are just automatically giving. There are also tech technology tools to help you prospect instead of going and knocking door to door. There are tools that will help you to figure out which asks are better, that will scan your database to figure out if there are people in there that could give more. So using some of those tools is also a really great use of time, but it's hard to say how to balance your time one way or the other, because again, we're talking about engagement on a much larger level, not just a monetary level. but a level of this person knows the right people, or this person has served at our organization for so long, and if it weren't for them, we wouldn't have this student club. There are things beyond monetary engagement that are just as important.
Terrific. All right. Another question that's a similar balance question, I suppose. How do you balance the need for prospecting new donors with deepening relationships with the dedicated supporters?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know if there's a balance. I think this is so hard because it's like both of those things are incredibly important. And again, it's bringing new people in the door is really important, but it on a purely financial level, it is more difficult to acquire a new donor than it is to retain a current donor. So you can't focus all of your energy on acquiring new donors because that is expensive, it takes a lot of time, and it's risky. People who already know your organization and already give to you and are already involved, those are the people that already know your organization and already give to you and are already involved. You know they're interested in what you're doing. And so serving them and making sure they're engaged is incredibly important and takes a little bit less work.
Awesome. All right, we'll get into a couple more questions before we wrap up here. For organizations with a limited budget, which strategies or models do you think they should start with first, or do they work in t more in tandem?
My first reaction is to start with the network because that is my favorite one. And it is it is partnering with the people that you already know to get your name out there. And so a lot of the work is on your partners, like in the same way with social media influencers, you kind of hand off the opportunity to share your brand with people who are passionate about what you're doing. And so I would start with the network. It is important to use all four models, but I think for starting out and for a limited budget, the network's a good one.
All right, terrific. We'll have a couple more questions here. Are there any common mistakes you see when trying to engage donors?
Hmm. For the sake of this presentation, I would say one of the most common mistakes is placing so much value on the monetary thing because you'll miss people who are really committed. Or I had a donor who gave $50 a month, and that would maybe not put them in my major donor category. But if they give $50 a month over X amount of years, that is a major donor. And so I think that one of the pitfalls is assigning the monetary value and the importance of the monetary value because you could miss people. The other thing I would say that we didn't really get into in this presentation, but is an important part of engagement. I don't really believe you can over communicate your impact. And so if there's an opportunity to share with someone that they have made an impact, I think that's very valuable. And to not rely on asks as connections. Like I said, with that corporate sponsor, I thought I was connecting with them every quarter because I was going to them and asking for them to give to a event, but that's not true. I was asking them every quarter. I wasn't connecting with them. So I would just recommend balancing relationship with ask because those two things don't always mean the same thing.
Awesome. Very good. I have one more final question. I've seen this a few times, kind of just filling in the chat, kind of just like a little bonus question. But a lot of people are wondering if there's any chance they can get these cards in hard copy. Is that something you guys are thinking about?
It's something we're thinking about. We will have them at conferences. So if you see our booth at a conference, definitely come up and see if we have cards there. At this moment, we're not shipping them because we don't know how much people are going to be excited about them. They're very new. This is actually the first presentation we're doing with them. So it's great to hear that you're interested. The landing page that you're going to, if we do end up deciding to print them, would be through that landing page. But right now, the cards are on the landing page. You can like choose the games and it'll take you into the cards, which is really cool. It's just digital cards, not physical.
Awesome. Thank you again for performing such or presenting such an informative webinar. Do you happen to have any final comments before we sign off today?
The biggest thing is just to remind you that your donor engagement is really just relationships with people who are passionate about the same thing that you're passionate about. It doesn't mean that they have to give a certain amount. It doesn't mean that they have to volunteer a certain amount of hours. It's people that are passionate about what you're passionate about and making sure that they have an opportunity to be a part of what you're doing.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Julia. I just wanted to remind everyone quickly that you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to this webinar recording. Please feel free to share this link with your colleagues. It will be made publicly available. The email will also include a survey link that you can fill out with your feedback on today's webinar. You should see a survey link pop up right here in Zoom following the session's conclusion. And on behalf of Charity Village, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you'll join us for our next free webinar on April 10th, Invitation to Conscious Service, a webinar for social service professionals. You can find more information on all of this and our upcoming webinars at charityvillage.com/webinars. Alternatively, feel free to sign up for our newsletter to make sure you don't miss the next webinar hosted by Charity Village. Thank you again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.